So here it is, the Chevy Silverado EV. Look, so this guy may have been a little late to the party, but hey, at least he showed up, right? And as crazy as it sounds, we're on the cusp of having not one or two, but like a whole bunch of really solid electric pickups for you to choose from. You know how crazy that sentence would have sounded like 10 years ago? Anyway, this is it, the Silverado EV. Is it any good, and how does it compare to the other fellas? Okay, so what exactly is this thing? Well, we could cut this video real short just by saying it's basically the real entry-level Hummer EV, but hey, that's no fun and is not entirely true either. You see, although they're gonna make a cheaper work truck style version, the real one, the one you want, well, it's $105,000 for a Chevy truck. I mean, let that sink in for a second. I don't know, with all these crazy new EVs coming out, does it sort of just feel like everybody's gotta be just stupid rich? I mean, there's just so many six-figure EVs hitting the market. I just gotta ask, I mean, like, who's buying all these? Anyway, enough about that, let's move on. Well, all right, not exactly. Let's get this price stuff just out of the way. You see, the Silverado is initially gonna be available in just two trims. There's sort of this stripped down entry-level WT trim, get it? WT, work truck. And this guy is actually pretty reasonable. This starts at about $40,000. Then on the totally opposite end of the spectrum, you get the range topping RST for, yeah, $105,000. And that's before destination. Now, look, between these two, it looks like Chevy's gonna make 4 additional trims to fill that $65,000 price gap between the WT and the RST, including, from what I hear, an off-road focus version. So that's cool. All right, so before we get into all the specifics, let's talk a little styling. So generally speaking, and yeah, look, this might just be sort of my humble opinion, but Chevy has been, well, how do I put this? It almost looks like most of Chevy's recent models were designed in the dark by a gaggle of CPAs. Okay, look, maybe I'm being a little dramatic, but seriously, name a beautiful Chevy that's not a Corvette. I mean, maybe the Trailblazer has some redeeming qualities, but look. All right, the good news here is that the Silverado EV is easily the best looking big Chevy in a very, very long time. I mean, they did a pretty good job. Look, they just basically modernized a pretty bland and generic truck design into something that's starting to feel a little special. I mean, it's basically a solid looking electric Chevy Avalanche. So the Silverado EV is about the same size as a regular crew cab short bed Silverado, but that's about where the similarities end. You see, the Silverado EV isn't even assembled next to the regular Silverados. It's actually built on the same platform as the Hummer EV. So yeah, this Silverado is probably more Hummer than it is Silverado, if that makes any sense. And I think that's probably a good thing here. I should point out though, that for the Silverado, the Hummer's platform got a bit narrower than the super wide Hummer, and that's probably a good thing. Some other shared features are the independent front and rear suspension, with the range topping RST getting an air suspension, I believe. So you're gonna get 2 motors, one in the front, one in the back, which notably is one less than the Hummer's 3-motor layout. So speaking of motors, how does this guy stack up in the cojones department? So the entry-level WT trim will come with a surprisingly potent 510 horsepower and 615 pound-feet of torque. For comparison's sake, the F-150 Lightning work truck comes with less horsepower at 426, but more torque at 775 pound-feet, probably giving the advantage to the Ford here with all that juicy torque. If you've recently returned from a series of smash and grab style bank robberies and are able to afford an RST trim, well, you'll be getting plenty more power now. How's 664 horsepower and 780 pound-feet of torque for you? Here's the thing though, to access this extra power, you gotta go into this drive mode called quote unquote wide open watts, or yeah, wow. And the Hummer is something similar, but it's called WTF. I don't know, more power is great and all, but these acronyms, somebody please get these marketing people in check, all right? All right, so how about range? So Chevy's not giving us much to go on other than there's gonna be an available super massive 200 kilowatt hour battery that's gonna be good enough for 400 miles of range. in something that weighs the same as one of those double-decker Airbuses they have in Europe. That's pretty nuts. This outpaces the F-150 Lightning and should sort of be on par with the big battery Rivians whenever those things become available. The only thing stopping this from being the potential range champion is the Cybertruck, but hey, at this pace, we might get a Starbucks on Mars before we actually get a Cybertruck, so whatever. Okay, back to the Silverado. So the electrical architecture is capable of taking 350 kilowatts of juice, and Chevy's claiming that you'll be able to bang 100 miles of range in just 10 minutes. That is, if you're actually able to find a fast charger that can A, handle those speeds, and B, actually works. For those of you who are looking to get into your first EV, just be prepared for, I don't know, kind of like a world of hurt. Yeah, look, it sucks, it really does, but the public fast charging infrastructure is kind of shockingly terrible. I mean, right now you just cannot depend on them. Unless you're in a Tesla, and then you're good to go. Unless it's like Thanksgiving weekend or something, and then prepare just to like wait and wait and wait. All right, you old school fans of the Chevy Avalanche, well, you're gonna rejoice here. Remember that convenient folding midgate thing? Well, it's back, baby, but Chevy is now calling it the Multiflex Midgate. If you haven't seen this, well, it's that wall between the bed and the rear seats, and it can be lowered in like a 60-40 split to increase the length of the bed and allows you to fit things that's going to give other pickups some trouble. You can even leave room for one passenger in the back while using the other side as sort of this pass-through. Along with this trick tailgate, these things work together to extend the bed from under 6 feet to almost 11 feet. Well, 10 feet, 10 inches to be precise. Throw in this massive frunk and yep, there's gonna be plenty of space to haul tons of your crap all around town. Not bad, Chevy. All right, so moving on to the inside, and first thing here, these back seats, well, they've been moved back a bit compared to the regular Silverado, and dude, just check out this legroom. Very nice. Plenty of room for those of us over 6 feet back there. And up front, yeah, check it out. Just like everything else, you got some giant ass screens up in here. The Big Dog RST trim has a super wide 17-inch screen and an 11-inch gauge cluster, but drop down to the trim for the masses, the WT, and things shrink a little bit with an 11-inch screen and an 8-inch gauge cluster. All right, look, gotta give Chevy some credit here as they do give us physical buttons and knobs to control both the volume and the air. That's awesome. So no fumbling through 11 menus to turn up the volume. Oh, and like the Hummer EV, you're not gonna find any leather up in here. Nope, we got some pretty nice leather alternatives, which is good to see. Overall, it's a fine interior. I mean, it's much better than we usually see from Chevy, but like, if I'm being honest, over 100 grand. I was kind of hoping for a little bit more, but look, whatever, it's a truck, right? All right, let's talk about the power outlet situation here because boy, there's a bunch of them. You get one 120 volt outlet in the front, you get one of those in the center console, you get 4 120 volt outlets in the bed along with one 240 volt outlet. There's also a power bar accessory that plugs into the charge port and adds 2 120s and another 240 volt outlet. I think that's 10 in total, and you can export up to 10.2 kilowatts of power, and get this, you can even charge another EV. So that's pretty cool. So like the Hummer, both the WT and the RST trim features 4-wheel steering, which helps maneuver these beasts and also kind of helps towing, I guess. In the Big Dog RST, you also get this air springs that can raise and drop the truck by 2 full inches. One thing though that you won't be getting that you can get with the Hummer are these locking diffs. In other words, no crab walk on the Silverado, but maybe becomes available with the off-road version of this thing, who knows. All right, so reservations are currently open, but production isn't scheduled to even start until the second quarter of 2023, with consumer deliveries not expected until late 2023, which sort of means 2024. All right, so bottom line, while this will prove to be Chevy's best truck ever, the competition is pretty fierce here. The F-150 Lightning is a real option, and it's also going to be available way before the Silverado. Then there's the Rivian, which, crazy as it sounds, might end up being like the better value. Then there's the Cybertruck, which look, you either love or you hate, and I can't imagine much cross-shopping between the two. I mean, if you're into the Cybertruck, pretty sure you're not dropping 100 large on a Chevy. And lastly, there's the Hummer, which is probably a bit better in most places. And when you're comparing the top trim Silverado versus the Hummer, I just think most people are gonna pull the trigger with the Hummer when you're in the 6-figure range. I guess it's just way too early to tell, and we'll have to see the missing 4 trims. It's hard to have this thing figured out, as the base model work truck version just won't be that appealing for most people not using it to, work. And then there's just not gonna be that many people willing to drop $100,000 for a Chevy. So if the Silverado wins or fails, it's gonna be because of the currently missing 4 middle trims. So, yep, I'm gonna hold judgment until we get some real info on those.